Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is determined to secure the return of the remains of all dead hostages. He was speaking at an official commemoration ceremony for soldiers killed in the Gaza war. In his address, Netanyahu said, quote, "The fight is not over yet." He added that whoever lays hands on Israel, including foes like Iran, will pay a very heavy price. He also stressed that Israel will achieve all of its goals of the Gaza war to secure Israel for years to come.
The struggle hasn't finished yet. But one thing is clear today. Anyone who raises their hands at us already knows that they will pay a heavy price for their aggression. We are determined to complete the victory, one which would influence our lives for many years. And there is a bigger truth. Israel stands on the front line of the clash between barbarism and the Enlightenment.
Meanwhile, the UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, has said Israel must open all crossings into Gaza immediately and allow more aid to enter the Strip. He made the comments while visiting the Rafah crossing in southern Gaza. Israel now says the crossing will probably open on Sunday, but that at first it will only be to allow sick and wounded people to leave. Satellite photos show hundreds of trucks lined up, waiting to enter the territory.
Families finally able to mourn their loved ones, hostages taken during the October 7th attacks who died in Hamas captivity. 4 more bodies were returned on Wednesday as part of the US-brokered peace deal that finally brought an end to fighting in the region. But Israel wants more.
Israel has so far only received the remains of 9 of our hostages who were either murdered on October 7th or murdered in captivity. We are demanding Hamas release the remaining hostages, the 19 hostages whose bodies are still being held inside of the Gaza Strip.
Hamas has handed over 10 coffins so far, one containing a body that was not an Israeli hostage, the Israel Defense Forces said. Hamas says it faces difficulties locating the deceased.
There is extreme difficulty due to the massive destruction, and therefore equipment is needed. We are now requesting equipment to enable the removal of rubble and the recovery of bodies.
Until they are returned, Israel appears to be limiting the flow of aid into Gaza. Hundreds of trucks here left waiting in line to be inspected by authorities. Israel denies causing any blockage.
Aid continues to enter the Gaza Strip as usual, and as part of the agreement, the Rafah crossing will be open in the future. We are in close contact with our partners and have done our part of this agreement, like I continue to reiterate. Now we're calling on Hamas to do everything on their side to uphold this agreement as well.
The Red Cross has backed up Hamas's claims that more time is needed to locate bodies, while urging Israel to let trucks through. Though it may take more scenes like this to get things moving.
Let's bring NDW's Tania Krämer. She's following all of that for us from Jerusalem. Tania, aid is flowing into Gaza, but many aid trucks are still stuck on the border due to disagreements over the bodies of hostages still in Gaza. We saw the pictures there. What is the latest on the search for their remains?
Well, we do know that 9 bodies have been returned by Hamas, 9 out of the 28, and it's clear that Israel expected by now to receive more of the remains of the deceased hostages. They have some of the officials, we just heard it from Gideon Saar, he said, they can bring, meaning Hamas, back a more significant number of the deceased hostages, and he called it a fundamental breach of the agreement. So there are accusations here from the political level in Israel that Hamas is not doing enough to bring back also those deceased hostages. Now, yesterday when they Hamas handed over 2 more bodies, they had said that's all they can do for now. They need more heavy equipment to come in. They need more help. They had indicated that they might also not be able to recover and locate all of the hostages because of the situation on the ground in Gaza. It's a very, that some of the bodies appear to be under the rubble, like many thousands also Palestinians that are still buried under the rubble. So we also understand that some international force should come in to help locate those bodies. But obviously there is the rhetoric on the one hand, the accusations that this is a breach of agreement. On the other hand, obviously we need to see what are the actions on the ground. And of course, it is very, very important for the families of those deceased hostages that they can receive the bodies rather sooner than later to bury them in Israel.
Yeah, this delay is, of course, a huge source of heartache for them. Other than that, what are the main challenges right now in moving towards a full implementation of this 20-point ceasefire plan?
Well, I think the challenges are huge, and I think we have been talking about that. Now, it would go into a next phase, but still, of course, for Israel, it's important to finish this sort of first phase of getting all the deceased hostages back. Then it's expected that actually the parties would have to hash out the remaining points, and these are points of contention, like the future governance of Gaza, the administration issue, the disarmament of Hamas, also the deployment of an international force, reconstruction of Gaza. So all these, important points, but at the moment, I think everything is focused on the issue of recovering and returning the remains of the deceased hostages. In Israel, there's a lot of pressure also on the government from the families, but also within the cabinet, where some have said there should be sanctions or at least freezing of this agreement, as you mentioned, by slashing some of the aid, also by not opening all the crossings and the Rafah crossing. So we have to wait and see. You see how fragile this process is.
DW correspondent Tania Krämer. Thanks so much, Tania.
Now, while the Gaza ceasefire is holding so far, what happens next is less clear. The US President Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan is short on specifics on how Gaza will be rebuilt. And with winter approaching, the territory's largely displaced population will soon face even more hardship.
Gaza in ruins. A field of rubble, an estimated 60 million tons. That used to be houses, hospitals, schools. Few homes remain, and the vast majority of Gazans are now unhoused refugees in their own territory, with winter on the way. The solution is not far off, according to US President Donald Trump.
It's so beautiful to see a new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part.
That may be optimistic. Rebuilding Gaza will be a monumental task, and there is no deal or agreement in place on how to do it. Clearing those millions of tons of rubble and dangerous munitions in areas that are in some cases still under Hamas control is the first challenge. Thousands of dead bodies are thought to be under collapsed buildings. Decomposing bodies can cause serious health risks, including cholera and tuberculosis. Emergency housing as the weather turns colder is another major challenge. With an estimated 90% of houses damaged or destroyed, many Gazans have nothing to return to and have been living in tents under catastrophic sanitary conditions. Long-term housing and infrastructure will take the longest to rebuild, potentially over a decade. Nearly 80% of Gaza's roads are damaged, and most of its hospitals and schools are in ruins. Hamas ran Gaza's infrastructure before the war, and its control of these institutions could be a sticking point. Trump's plan for Gaza includes a, quote, Trump economic development plan that would create a panel of international experts to create investment opportunities that could help pay for rebuilding. The UN says at least $70 billion will be needed. Financing the rebuilding is the greatest question mark of all. The money will have to come from somewhere, whether as a business investment or humanitarian funding. With long-term control of Gaza still up in the air and Hamas resisting surrendering its power, it may be a while before the question is answered.
Raja Khalidi is the Director General of the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute. That's the leading Palestinian think tank on economic policy and development. He joins us now from Ramallah in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Welcome to DW. Thank you for your time. Given the catastrophic situation in Gaza, the many obvious urgent needs, where and how do you think rebuilding should start?
Well, in fact, rebuilding, I think your report was very accurate in tracing the stages before we start talking about rebuilding. So I think for the coming year, we're going to be totally preoccupied with preparing for rebuilding, but more importantly, providing relief. And this is nothing that, this is something which I'm not sure if it's calculated into the 70 billion. I think the 70 billion includes rubble removal and everything else, possibly temporary shelter. Temporary shelter, for example, this is the third winter these people are going to be living under plastic. Now, many of them. And, the most urgent need after relief, after food and medicines, of course, and water and energy returning is going to be, and urgently, like in a month, we need temporary shelter that's decent, that's transitional, but that lets people start to pick up their lives. And, these are things that, I don't know, the Trump plan, to be honest, is big on generalities, and as you mentioned, not very big on the specifics. But we know in Palestine, we have our plans. The Palestinian Authority has a well-developed relief, rehabilitation, recovery and reconstruction plan, which the Egyptian and Arab plan is based on. And so, the issue of what to do when and how much it's going to take, the Palestinians are on the job, so to speak. Now, the issue here, really, if I may, is that because you've linked it all to the Trump vision of an international oversight. Oversight is one thing, especially if people are going to be putting investment grants, governments and corporations. Oversight, for sure, is needed. And, of course, the World Bank was already ready, and I think will be the main vehicle for that, regardless of this council, whether or not it gets formed. But the point is that the authority in Gaza to do the reconstruction, the vision for reconstruction, the vision for rehabilitation, the delivery of services must be governed by the Palestinians themselves and run by and designed by the Palestinians themselves.
Well, Mr. Khalidi, that was going to be my next question, actually. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that was absolutely going to be the next point. So isn't Gaza's future leadership, does that not need to be settled, as you say, before any construction can begin? And how will that work?
Yeah, well, there's a roadmap to that, both partially in the Trump plan, when it talks about Hamas leaving government and disarming, and the Gaza Strip being disarmed, at least not armed. That's already there. And that also exists, more importantly, I think, in the French-Saudi plan that was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, except for the United States, I think, and Israel didn't join the consensus, that there should be a Palestinian government in place which is legitimate. Now, the only legitimate Palestinian government will ultimately have to be a Palestinian government linked to this state of Palestine, the embryo, if you wish, state of Palestine, that some countries in the world recognize is an inevitability. And indeed is a reality in the form of the PA today, but now undergoing a constitutional process of moving into the next phase, which is the state of Palestine, beginning in Gaza, but at the same time, developing its institutions to serve the whole Palestinian people. Now, that is the solution. That's the right way to do things. That's the way the donors have taught us things should be done. Palestinian ownership, Palestinian leadership. So what I want to say is that there are plenty of Palestinians able to play that role.
How big is the risk, though, that billions of reconstruction dollars meant for Gaza, meant for the people who live there, could end up in the hands of, being misused by militant groups such as Hamas?
I mean, no, it's certainly not, because we're talking about a grand design, right? Supposedly, this is not just about Gaza. This is a plan for peace in the Middle East. So we've been sold in the last few days. If it's a plan for peace in the Middle East, it means you have a Palestinian state sooner rather than later. It means that in the interim, you have an Arab, multi-Arab and UN sanctioned, I would think, Security Council is going to have to now take undertake its responsibility of sanctioning a multinational force, some sort of international oversight of the money, and affirm the United Nations commitment to the establishment of the Palestinian state. So those are linked together. Hence, I think a merging of the Trump principles and the Saudi French initiative, in the form of which already exists now in a UN General Assembly, into the Security Council will provide the sort of guarantees that would end the threat, if you think there is one, of Hamas or any other non-legitimate group, reasserting itself. Don't forget, I mean, the division in Palestine was under a regime which Israel, encouraged this division. So, if Israel takes its, hands off and leaves us to sort out our affairs, and if the international community does not try to establish an authority that rules us in place of Israel, then I think, you can be assured that Palestine will be a partner for peace and development and economic, exchange and all of that.
All right. Raji Khalidi of the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.